Media at McGill is a hub of research, scholarship, and public outreach on issues and controversies in media, technology, and culture. Visit us online at media.mcgill.ca.
Who wanted to read something different than from what they were getting. So it's not all over in that sense. Things are changing. And if politics and media, total mainstream politics and the media go on like this, people will eventually begin to ignore them and develop within these societies a different way of functioning. And that is, unless they come up with certain good alternatives, that unfortunately will affect democracy itself. So the issues we're discussing are not small issues. These are big issues, which is why it's extremely important for people to be engaged, not to give up, not to say that we can't do anything. Once you say that, not to retreat into a total narcissistic individualist world, a world which consumerist society encourages. But consumerist society is limited because not everyone can afford to shop. In Britain, actually, fewer and fewer people can afford to shop these days because of the prices, leave alone buy homes. And that's why change will have to be made in the way in which these societies are being run, and that will only come about if there are movements from below, if people think, if people challenge, if people question. That remains a very important part of what needs to be done in Western societies. Because that was also what happened ultimately in Brezhnev's Russia, in Poland, in Czechoslovakia. People ignored officialdom and began to organize separately. And you had very active dissidents. You had great literature being produced. You had documentaries being produced. That's why Michael Moore is so popular. Because he produces a documentary which 30 years ago, give or take a few scenes, would have been shown on mainstream television everywhere. But now it isn't shown on mainstream television, so he has to go and make a documentary which plays to packed houses. So the problem is not the people. The problem is the political elite that is very dominant at the present time. And when the people actually decide to move, they can move mountains. And there I end with a wonderful quote from the great German poet and playwright Bertolt Brecht, who, when the East German regime under which he lived sent out the tanks to crush a workers' uprising in East Berlin, and then blamed the people and said the reason we had to send out the tanks is because the people were irresponsible. And Brecht wrote this wonderful four-line poem, which was an open letter to the Central Committee of the German Communist Party, which was ruling. He said, "Dear comrades, it seems to me you think the fault is with the people. Why don't we dissolve the people and elect a new one?" Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm very happy I never go away from talks without answering questions. So as long as you keep them to questions, I will answer them. But if you go beyond 4 sentences in your questions, it's very unfair to other people who want to ask. So please be brief. Yeah. I don't know. Who wants to start? Yes? Okay, okay. Where are you going? Oh, there's a mic there. Sorry, I didn't see it. I thought perhaps you might have been caught short and wanted to. Okay.
Yes, my simple question is, do you see any glimmer of hope in the Canadian media or not?
In the where?
In Canadian media, the whole of Canada we are ruled by corporation press media, and it's controlled by corporations. Do you see any glimmer of hope that this thing will change? Because Al Jazeera was not allowed to operate here.
Yeah. Well, as I've said, in my talk, of course I see a glimmer of hope, and the glimmer of hope is in ordinary people. You never have change which comes about immediately. There are many, many different processes which have to be undergone before a population gets ready to act and changes things. Till that happens, nothing will happen. But when people get fed up, they will move. I mean, look, in the United States, for instance, you don't have large demonstrations every day, but the population is very fed up on the war. Everyone knows that. What they will do if the Democrats come to power and carry on behaving in the same old way, that's an interesting question, and we will see. But ultimately, it depends on what happens in the minds of people and how they organize, etc. And they have to learn and think of new ways of organizing, because traditional politics doesn't do the trick anymore, and I think people more or less know that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful speech. I'm just wondering if we could tie the problems we have domestically, locally, not just internationally, to the corporations who are practically ruling the world. The politicians are just puppets in the hands of corporations. Here in Quebec, 40% of people live below the poverty line. And citizens are paying 65% in taxes, while corporations don't pay any. They pay 4%, if they pay at all, and they have tax havens, tax loopholes, and so on. So we should tie the two, the social misery in which we are, to the environment, to the international politics. It's the corporations who want the resources for free, such as oil in Iraq, and such as what they have ripped off Iraq. They have ripped off their resources. They want to take their resources for free.
Okay.
I think we should tie the two together. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, since that was a comment, not a question, I'll move on to the next question.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. I don't know if you're aware of the fact of the degree to which the government of Canada, under the previous liberal regime, its involvement in having Israeli air forces train in Canada, apparently to in fact rain down bombs on civilian populations, and indeed former Defense Minister Bill Graham boasted about this. And I don't know if you're aware of the degree to which Canada is in fact involved in Iraq, because Canada sent very senior officers to help plan the invasion, and Canada has ships directing the bombs at the hospitals and schools and so on in Iraq. And it's unfortunate that your comments on media in Canada didn't necessarily reflect these realities, because we are fed daily, we're fed this lie that Canada is not involved in Iraq, and that the Lebanon thing is far from us, whereas it may have in fact been planned in Canada.
Okay, thank you very much for that piece of information. Next question.
I have a question. And by the way, sir, thank you for coming. You made a comment before about, I might have misheard you to some degree.
Could you speak up a bit? I'm sorry, the acoustics.
Sorry. Maybe I'll try and talk with a higher voice. You made a comment before about American or coalition forces consulting PR people before they were going on missions. It was a very brief comment you made, and I'm wondering if you can comment, besides American generals storming into Al Jazeera, can you tell me if you have any information about to what extent the American military in particular, but also the British or the Australians, are using PR people within the countries that they're operating in? I'd be very interested to know. Thank you.
Well, the information is that they hire public relations very high highly paid public relations operatives to do some of their PR business for them. And these people